He was a cop who spent his life serving justice, but one false accusation shattered everything. Stripped of his badge and branded a criminal, he made a single request before prison to see his loyal K9. No one in that courtroom expected what happened next, and it left the world stunned. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The courtroom. Buzzed with whispers, but none of them softened the weight pressing down on Officer Daniel Hayes. Once a decorated cop known for his bravery, he now sat in chains, his badge stripped away. The man who had spent years defending justice was suddenly branded a criminal. The irony cut deeper than the shackles. Beside him, though absent in body, lingered the memory of his partner, Rex, a German shepherd who had saved his life countless times. Together they had brought down gangs, rescued children, and patrolled streets under the harshest conditions. Rex wasn't just a K9 unit, he was family. Losing him felt like losing everything, but the system didn't care about loyalty or truth. A single accusation, twisted evidence, and whispered corruption were enough to tear Daniel's life apart. He watched jurors avoid his eyes, as if afraid they might glimpse his pain. Or worse, the truth they chose to ignore. The gavel struck, sealing his fate. Guilty. His heart clenched as the words echoed, each syllable shredding what was left of his dignity. For the first time in his life, Daniel felt powerless. He wasn't afraid of prison. He was afraid of being forgotten, of never again seeing the one soul who had never once betrayed him. The days inside prison blurred into one another. Cold, walls, clanging bars, and the hollow echo of footsteps on concrete. Daniel sat in his cell staring at the ceiling, his thoughts circling like vultures. He had lost his badge, his reputation, his freedom. But what gnawed at him most was the absence of Rex. When the warden finally approached him, clipboard in hand, Daniel expected nothing more than routine. But the man's expression was different. Stern, yet curious. "You get one final request," he said flatly. Most prisoners asked for a last meal, a phone call, maybe a letter. The words were supposed to bring closure, but for Daniel they cracked open his heart. His voice was quiet at first, trembling as if the words themselves carried unbearable weight. "I want to see Rex. My K9. The room fell silent. The guard at the door raised his eyebrows, exchanging a glance with the warden, a convicted man asking not for himself but for a dog. It sounded absurd, but Daniel's eyes didn't waver. They burned with a raw honesty that silenced every snicker, every doubt. "He's all I have left," he whispered. The request rippled through the prison like a secret too heavy to ignore. Against all odds, the warden gave a reluctant nod. The reunion was set, and no one could have guessed the storm it would unleash. The prison yard was unusually quiet that morning. Guards lined the perimeter, their expressions guarded, some skeptical, others curious. Then the gate creaked open, and a handler led in a strong German shepherd. His fur gleamed in the sunlight, but his eyes scanned the crowd anxiously, searching for something or someone. Daniel stepped forward, chains clinking softly with each step. For a moment Rex froze, his ears perking, his tail rigid. Silence stretched as if the world held its breath. Then recognition exploded. Rex barked once, loud and sharp, before lunging forward, nearly dragging the handler off his feet. His body trembled with joy. The reunion was raw and unfiltered. Daniel dropped to his knees, tears streaking his face as Rex buried his head against his chest. The man's shackled hands fought to hold the dog close, pressing into his fur as if afraid he might vanish. Around them, even hardened guards blinked back tears. It wasn't just a meeting of man and dog. It was a reunion of souls torn apart by injustice. For Daniel, the weight of prison melted away in that single embrace. And for Rex, it was as if his long, restless wait had ended. The bond between them was undeniable, and everyone present felt it deep in their bones. The embrace should have ended, in quiet relief, but it didn't. Rex's body stiffened suddenly, his ears twitching, nose flaring as though he had caught a scent no one else could. He pulled away from Daniel's arms, growling low, his amber eyes locked onto a corner of the room where several officials stood. At first, the guards thought it was nerves, the dog overwhelmed by the crowd. But Rex didn't bark aimlessly. He fixated on one man in particular, a detective who had played a key role in Daniel's conviction. The shepherd's hackles rose, his growls deepening, his entire posture screaming warning. Uneasy murmurs spread through the courtroom. The detective shifted uncomfortably, forcing a laugh. "He's just reacting to the environment," he muttered, but his voice wavered. Rex yanked hard on the leash, straining to reach him, as if trying to rip the truth out of the shadows. The handler struggled to restrain him while whispers filled the air. Daniel, still kneeling, stared at the scene with wide eyes. His partner wasn't confused. Rex was trained to detect danger, deceit, even hidden contraband. The fact that he singled out this man couldn't be ignored. The once solemn reunion had turned into something far more unsettling. The dog wasn't just protecting his master. He was trying to reveal a secret buried deep in the very system that condemned him. The room fell into a tense hush. Rex's growls cut through the silence, drawing every eye to the trembling detective. One of the senior officers frowned, remembering the testimony that sealed Daniel's conviction. Something about it had never sat right, but no one dared to question it. Until now, a younger detective stepped forward, pulling a file from his satchel. "Sir," he said carefully, "I've been re-examining the evidence. There are inconsistencies." He placed documents on the table, phone records, surveillance logs, reports that contradicted the timeline given at trial. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the puzzle pieces began falling apart. Rex barked furiously, lunging again toward the detective in question. The man's face drained of color, his forced composure cracking under the pressure. He stammered excuses, but the weight of the dog's unrelenting instincts and the damning paperwork left him exposed. The courtroom smelled the fear before the confession came. Within minutes, whispers turned into a storm. The truth was undeniable. Daniel had been framed, betrayed by the very man who once called himself a brother in arms. And now, in front of judges, officers, and citizens, the lies unraveled completely. Justice, long buried under corruption, clawed its way back into the light, all because a loyal dog refused to stay silent. The gavel struck once more, but this time, it wasn't to condemn. It was to restore. The judge's voice rang out, steady and clear. "The conviction is overturned. Officer Daniel Hayes, you are a free man." For a moment, Daniel sat frozen, the words almost too heavy to believe. Rex barked sharply, breaking the silence, his tail wagging furiously as if he understood. Daniel dropped to his knees, burying his face in the dog's fur, tears streaming freely. Daniel paused on the courthouse steps, looking down at his loyal companion. "They took everything from me," he whispered, voice breaking. "But they couldn't take you." Rex pressed his head against his master's chest, and in that moment, everyone watching understood. Loyalty had saved a man's life, and justice had finally come home.